All right, welcome back, everybody. That was a super long opening segment here. Hopefully we got Colter hooked up here in just a second. All right, so let's try and recap where we left off, at least from last week. And I know Sam was getting everybody as much info as possible on what was going on the latest of what's happening around college athletics here. So here we are. It's now June 23rd. Okay, so we are a week out from the deadline that is officially extended for all non-Power 4 schools to either opt in or out of the House settlement. We have I would say at least 25 to maybe 30 FCS schools that have made that announcement. 3 that are in the Missouri Valley Football Conference, University of South Dakota, Murray State, and Southern Illinois have made official announcements. For the other 7 schools, we do not know. In the Big Sky Football Conference, we know of at least one that has decided to do it. Another is not even in the Big Sky Football Conference anymore. And I thought, well, there's one person to get us up to date on what's going on in the Big Sky. Friend of the program, Colter Nuanez, joins us from Skyline Sports on a Monday, fresh off a trip to school for his son. So I appreciate him rushing back to join us on this Monday. It's great to see you, bud. So give us the update on first on the Montanas, what their position is on the House settlement.
Well, first I got to ask you, this whole thing is so not only interesting, but also like mind-bending to follow,
Correct.
right? I mean,
correct.
My producer told me, we always go back and forth giving like weekly updates on the House and stuff like that. My producer at ESPN Radio, he told me the other day, he's like, dude, I don't have the time to follow this anymore.
Nope.
Like I have multiple full-time jobs here. He's like, I'll just let you tell me what's going on and what I should think about it. So what do you think? I mean, this has been a crazy last couple months.
We did a segment, basically the whole show 2 weeks ago today, where I tried to explain it to our viewers why this is important, and I don't know if we accomplished it because it doesn't involve stuff on the field right now. And my point was it's going to. That's why you need to know what's happening. But I think until there's actual pen to paper, it's really hard. For me, I'm much like you. I'm in it every day, and I'm swimming, man. Maybe I'm drowning now because it's really hard to follow.
I mean, I think that we have a lot of people that are huge, especially college football and basketball fans, that have decided, hey, I don't want to know. Like, I don't want to know about the NIL. I don't want to know about the House settlement. I just want to go on Saturdays to the Fargo Dome and have some beers and cheer on the team and, or whoever you might root for. So it is interesting. But I agree with you. I do think it's very important just because, first of all, what we do is entertainment based, but it's also informationally based, and we cover institutions of higher learning, and these people are getting paid with taxpayer money. So it is important for the citizens of North Dakota or Montana to know about this. So when it comes to the Montana schools, Montana State had said prior to the House going through that if and when it went through, they would opt in. I think that they're very excited about the opportunity for revenue sharing. I think the schools, especially at the FCS level, that have been ahead of NIL, especially from a collective perspective, I think they like the House settlement because I think it gives them a lot more internal institutional control. Montana, on the other hand, has said, hey, let's let Montana State do this. And we're going to sit here and watch. I do think the Grizz have a pretty defined plan to opt in within a year. I think they just want to see how it all goes. And like Ken Haslam told me, the AD at Montana, he said, hey, we'll let Montana State jump into the deep end of the pool. Like they can go out there in the deep end of the lake and we'll see what happens. But Montana plans to opt in as well. So I don't know. I don't know if one way is better than the other. I think that good for Montana State for having a plan to be able to opt in right away. And I think also probably good for Montana for being a little bit discerning and sort of seeing how it all goes.
It's funny because I think Colter in North Dakota, if you would have told me or asked me 2 weeks ago, I think North Dakota State was leaning in. I think now there might be leaning out. University of North Dakota is going to go in, I think, because of hockey, because of all of their rival schools that are playing the Big Ten that obviously all are in. I think that's going to force UND to make that decision. But I wouldn't be surprised if a year from now that North Dakota State is in. I think they're in a waiting game as well. I think we're going to have a decision this week, and that's where I believe they're leaning.
Speaking of fighting, or UND hockey, I almost said fighting Sioux hockey. It isn't fighting Sioux anymore. But this is such a side note, such a tangent, but I'm in the process of moving, which, by the way, with little kids is a nightmare.
Good
Don't
luck.
do it. But I found this old school North Dakota Fighting Sioux hockey jersey
Oh my.
that I got at the Big Sky kickoff once upon a time when UND first joined the league. So I was thinking, should I like put this up on Twitter? Should we do like a giveaway or something like that? I feel like there's got to be a UND fan out there that wants this old school Fighting Sioux jersey. So if you are that person, hit me up on Twitter.
There we go.
Yeah, either way, though, I think it is interesting that there is sort of a dichotomy there in North Dakota too between UND and NDSU.
Anybody else in the Big Sky have made it official on what they're doing yet?
Not yet. I mean, the talk, as you know, has been all about the California schools with UC Davis getting invited into the Mountain West
Yep.
and everything but football. But then Sac State having, I mean, as bold of a push to try to move up as I've ever seen.
Yep.
And I mean, it's almost like comedy when you watch it. I mean, I give them credit for being bold and pushing forward. And I also give their president credit for how outwardly spoken he is. It's also just crazy to watch it on Twitter.
Yes.
Like I can't imagine watching other university presidents. Like I just think about Waded Cruzado, who just retired at Montana State after 17 years of excellent leadership. I think about her going on Twitter and like going at fans.
No.
It would just never happen,
No.
right? And so you watch Dr. Luke Wood and you're like, man, this guy is brash. This guy is brazen. Like he might be the governor of California someday. I don't know, but it's been wild to watch. So that's been sort of the whole thing that sucked up all the air in Big Sky Conference conversations is what's going on with the California schools? Is UC Davis going or not? The thing to remember for people that are listening that are interested in the money trail of all of this, the Big Sky is such a fascinating league to cover when it comes to that because of the inequity that exists because of the vast geographic landscape.
Right.
So to put that in perspective, I mean, Sac State Athletics gets about 80% subsidies from the state of California. Northern Arizona, I mean, they have the same state subsidies as Arizona and Arizona State. So you're talking about you're funding your athletic department before you raise a dollar or sell a ticket. Montana and Montana State very much like North Dakota State, where they're almost fully self-funded. You got to go sell tickets, you got to produce revenue. So even it's so hard for people to understand because in Missoula on a Saturday, 27,000 people fill this stadium. I mean, they sell twice as many tickets
Right.
as Sac State would. But Sac has way more money because they get all this money from the state, they get all this money from student athletic fees, they have way more students. So it's just interesting to follow because I think a lot of people have been wondering why is Sac State the one that's the FBS candidate?
Yeah.
Why is UC Davis the FBS candidate? Why isn't Montana or Montana State? It's hard for people to wrap their minds around.
The part that I know there was no love lost when Southern Utah decided to leave the Big Sky. So now I can't imagine anybody's crying that Sac State's going, right? That hey, don't let the door hit you on the way out, right?
Yeah, it's that's another really interesting fold here is that Sac, how do I say this as gently as possible but as accurately as possible? Sac State has a better chance of being a relevant FBS team than they do of actually winning an FCS national championship.
That is exactly right. Yep, that's exactly right.
It's the other part that's really hard to wrap their minds around. Like, what is Sac State gonna do in the Big Sky? Like, they had their little moment.
They had their moment.
When Troy Taylor got it rolling, but then they proved that they couldn't win in the playoffs. They shared 3 Big Sky titles, but they couldn't get it done in the playoffs. But are they ever going to consistently catch Montana State? Are they ever going to even come close to catching North Dakota State? No, the gap is so wide. I mean, they were talking forever and a day. Could they catch New Mexico State, though, or Liberty, or, Western Michigan or something like that? I think they could. I also think that the sad truth, and this is hard for people that live in rural markets like us to wrap their minds around, but Sac State is immediately more relevant where they live and where they're at by never winning a single FBS game.
Just of geography. Right. Correct. Right? Yep.
If they're going 3-9, but every year they're playing Fresno State and San Jose State and Cal and whoever, people will care more. At least I think. I think that has a shelf life for how long they care more, but I think immediately they care more. So the whole thing has been sort of mind-bending. But in terms of what the Big Sky thinks of it, there used to be the notion that you wanted California schools in the league because it was easier to recruit. That's one of the main reasons the Big Sky added Sac State back in 1996. But now recruiting the world is flat in recruiting, right?
Yep.
I mean, everybody in the world has social media and huddle film, and the camps are crazy, and the way that you can go get guys. There's very few diamonds in the rough. You don't need to go play a game in Sacramento every other year to have a
No.
pipeline from Northern California to your school. So, um, I I don't think a lot of people are that sad about Sac State leaving the league. Now the Big Sky has a choice to make, though, right? Because the Big Sky expanded too much when
Yep.
Doug Fuller was the commissioner, went to 12 teams, I guess 13 football affiliates. That caused this nightmarish schedule where you play in 8 conference games, you don't play four. The
Yeah.
all conference teams were a mess because the coaches wouldn't even see half the teams in the league in a given year, right? So, but we've gotten it back down to having a couple less teams. Well, now the Big Sky's question is, do you expand by one for full-time members so that you have an even number of teams for basketball,
Basketball.
etc.?
Yeah.
Or do you keep it at 9 and then just have everybody play an 8-man round robin basically in football, and then basketball you have a lone wolf that has to not have a travel partner? We'll see. I've heard rumblings of a couple different schools. I'm sure we'll get to that, but the Big Sky has a choice now because Sac State's made this pretty clear that this is the last season they're going to be playing Big Sky Conference football.
As someone who covers the Summit League and they have an odd number, I would tell you don't do that if you're the Big Sky, because it stinks. They have the Summit's been at 9 for 3 years now since Western Illinois left, and for basketball, it just doesn't make it doesn't. The scheduling there stinks. So I would highly advise the Big Sky to go get someone. Now that's who I don't. Is Southern Utah possibly, could they mend fences? I know it's a new president. There's definitely going to be a new AD, but I don't. There's a lot of hard memories there, Colter, on when Southern Utah left.
Yeah, Southern Utah, I think, is not it. I think that bridge is probably
Burn.
burned. I think Utah Tech is probably the main
Okay.
candidate. Um, Southern Utah came with so many headaches for the Big Sky, and I enjoyed covering Southern Utah because they
Cedar.
were like this
Yeah.
great outlier. They
Yep.
were this great outlier. It was totally different than most of the other teams in the league. But you know, something as simple as when they were travel partners with NAU, Southern Utah started booking their men's basketball games at 11 a.m. on Saturdays so that they knew the team that was coming up from flag had just ridden on a bus for 4 hours, play it as early as you can play it to give yourself this crazy home court advantage. Just little things like that, nobody's going to be, nobody was sad to not have to go to Cedar City anymore. And you might say, okay, St. George is right up the way. Well, St. George is a heck of a lot easier to get to. You can fly into Vegas. It's way more accessible than Cedar City. I would personally like to see them not add a team,
Okay.
but I get what you're saying because the uneven nature of it, then it gets super weird with basketball and home and homes and all that.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Sometimes I dive into this house settlement stuff and all this other details, and I sit there and think, well, what's the point of expanding or not expanding? Because in 5 years or less, this is all going to just be completely different. So maybe we just sit here and just watch it, fall down around us.
That's I tend to agree with you as well, but I think too often presidents don't like that. We've got to be active. We got to go do something. We got to be proactive, and that's why I think the Missouri Valley's in the same boat. The Missouri Valley Summit League combo now. We got a roll here. I think they will do something as well. I think they'll add just so they can add. I really believe that.
Yeah, and I also just think that we're always talking about what happens when the Power Four decides they want to break
Right.
off. Then what will happen? And there's been all this speculation of the new second tier of Division I football with a group of five and the powers of the FCS like North Dakota State and Montana. Will they realign with the second tier and have a playoff in that new sort of let's just call it Division I AA, like it should be called anyways, right? But I think that the thing that is untalked about is what happens when a good majority of the FCS doesn't think that FCS football is worth it for them anymore. I don't want to call schools out, but there's a whole tier in the Missouri Valley, there's a whole tier in the Big Sky, and then you're talking about all the other leagues basically where what are you actually playing for?
Yep.
Can you keep up with teams that have $30 and $35 million budgets when you're sitting over here with a $10 million budget? Wouldn't it be better for you to have a third tier of Division I football? Like, imagine if you just took the top 10 or 12 FCS teams out of the FCS playoffs, and then you had those teams stand alone as a playoff. That'd be very entertaining. Like Austin P versus Chattanooga, or Villanova, whomever. that would be very entertaining. And I think they would also make it a lot more wide open too. So I think that people know that the fracturing is coming from the top, but what happens when it happens in the middle too? I think that's the other big question for both the Big Sky and the Missouri Valley.
All right, we got to roll. Here's a way to ruin your summer. Big Sky Media Day here is about 3 weeks or 4 weeks out here, so it's almost here.
I know it's crazy how it's creeping up, but I got a lot of golf planned between.
There you
now
go.
And then. I will survive.
Great to see you, bud. Have a great summer. We'll talk down the road, okay?
Hey, thanks, guys.
Colter Nuanez joins us from Skyline Sports. It's an awesome job covering the Montana schools and the Big Sky Conference. And their media day is July 19th. The Missouri Valley is July 21. So we're on the clock. We've got about 3 weeks of summer to enjoy before football season is ready to roll. We'll break. We'll wrap up our first hour. Big second hour coming up, including about less than an hour from now. Jet Feeney will join us from Moorhead. Back on Hot Mic on WDAY Extra, Inforum.com right after this.